another YouTube tutorial. Here I won't be doing any watercolor painting, so hopefully you don't feel like you've been misled or anything like that. But there's something that me and my friend Miss Margaret were talking about, and it had to do with perspective, especially with water, a river scene or something like that coming towards you. Now, I'm going to be drawing on this. This is kind of the best setup I can go for it. Now, with perspective, let's see. I thought about this, and I did this in my mind at work, and there was two things that I wanted to come up with. I wanted to have an idea with the vertical, so the vertical, and the horizontal. And I wanted to sum it up with very basic, where with the vertical, as you recede, you're going to get smaller. So if you go back, you're going to shrink. And as you come forward, you get larger. And with the horizontal, as you go back, we are also going to get shrink. And as you come forward, you're going to get larger. Now, bear with me, because what I'm going to say at first is something you probably already know. And I'm even going to talk about perspective from the standpoint of how I remember learning about it in school. I mean, for me, I have memories of, I don't know if it was like second grade or something like that, where we learned about the vanishing point and two-point perspective. And what I mean by that is, you have a scene, and they have a point where everything's going to vanish to. Meaning if you have a road, it's going to look like it extends back to that, every line that you draw for that. So anything going deep into the picture is going to go there. If we have the front of a building, there we go, but maybe the sides recede back towards this. Here's another building, front of the building, horizontal, recedes, it goes back, it follows that imaginary line there. In fact, we could even put windows on it, and they would go to those points. Now, this is something that you've probably seen in books. We could do another building behind it, and that's going to be at a more extreme angle. Maybe a tall, narrow building. If we see the side of it, extends back. Hopefully you get the point. You see what I'm talking about. So perspective, you got a vanishing point. Everything that goes into the page extends to that point. Now, there's also the two-point perspective, which you may have learned, where you have maybe the corner of a building and the lines receding seem to travel back to that. For example, a window, they extend. This one's going to go up on an angle. And this is really important with an art. I think, something as simple as, if we have a wheat field or any type of field, we have a point, and the rows of corn or wheat or whatever are going to extend back to that point. So it gets utilized a lot in watercolor. But I feel like with water, actual rivers and streams, there's a lot of issues that people have. In general, I try to think, and I probably make this mistake too, where as I'm closer, wider, bigger, and as the stream extends back and winds back, whatever, it gets smaller. Okay, so that's just a small little sketch just to give you an idea. Now, I see a lot of people, and I'm going to try to do this. Let's make it narrower, hard word for me to pronounce, obviously. It gets bigger, and it might be something like this. Okay, here's the water. And it just doesn't seem to sit right. Now, here's one thing we have to keep in mind, is that even though we're talking about perspective and rules and whatnot, yes, somewhere in nature, you will have something like that. However, that's the exception as opposed to what we commonly see. So, in your studies, in your practice, pursue the common and being able to convey that, and then down the line, explore the uncommon and experiment with that and see how you can make something like this sit correctly on the page. Now, here so far is the common perspective. Here's kind of, I guess, a little bit example of what you kind of want to approach. Here's an issue that people have. Here's an example of perspective besides water. And here is kind of just the general things I was talking to Miss Margaret about. This next picture that I'm going to draw is what I was thinking about at work. And hopefully this makes sense. It might be a little weird. I was, hallway duty this morning, and just looking down the hallway, thinking about this stuff and thinking about the conversation that I had with her. Let's say we have a viewer, a painter. Painter's standing there looking. The painter, there is a puddle of water, and then at a distance further, there's a puddle of water. I drew those puddles of water the same length. However, one is further from our viewer, our painter, than the other. Now I'm going to draw lines from the corner of this to his eye. So, even though we're not painting, we're going to use a Hake brush to draw this line. And I figured I'd use that so my lines don't seem too crummy. We have that line passing from it. Now, this other one, it's still kind of a little crummy line, but you'll see it in a second. This other one did not catch. And there we go. Now, what's happening here is the angle is much narrower. And if I was to draw, let's say, a piece of paper that we're painting on or a viewfinder, you'll see that the one that is closer, even though it's the same size, that was the length, will appear vertically larger than the other one. So if we look at what this guy is seeing straight on, here's our closer puddle, and here is our further puddle. And that gives us a vertical distance. This is a mathematical angle explanation of why things will get smaller and in that vertical direction as they recede back. This is also common if you do any type of hunting or archery or something like that. If a target is right in front of you, it's very easy to hit. As it's very far away, even a slight discrepancy in the angle that you're at with the bow can cause you to miss it. Now, this is the vertical. Let's think about the horizontal. So, I'm going to have this person, I'm trying to think of how I want them to look. Right here. This is the top of their head. They're looking down a hallway. Let's say here's just a point, here's another point as well. I'm going to do those same angles to the viewer. Okay, so this is the closer object, not the best angle, but hopefully the point is there. And here is the second one. Okay, now the closer sides, let's say these are doors or something like that, the distance, if we put a piece of paper here, that distance is longer, wider than the far one. So if we were to see this guy looking at his paper, these two lines would represent those 2 points. These far distance guys are much closer, and that's that recession and the shrinking that takes place as things get further back. So through angles and thinking about how you interact with your environment, hopefully you can see how they approach and what we'd say. Same reason why, if we have something very close to us in a painting, if we have, I don't know, let's say there's a flower pot right in front of us. It could seem very large. And then in the distance, you could have a small mountain. Mountain doesn't look like that, but it's because something close takes up a bigger field of vision. Far away, you have an immensity. Close, only a little bit. Far away, you can see a whole bunch. Excuse me. So that's a different way for you all to think about perspective. And what I really want you to think about is applying this to water. And I always feel bad about using up fountain pen paper because I like writing on it and whatnot. So keep that in mind. If you have the puddles and whatnot, if we have a picture, you can have a puddle up close and a puddle further away. You know, narrow it, make it small. Play around with sizes and whatnot. If you do have something that gets bigger in the distance, for example, let's say I have a puddle right here, and then I have an ocean. You can see, we know the ocean is going to be immense, but perspective-wise, the puddle is going to seem larger. And here, I have it larger vertically than the water in the back. So even though it's wider, that shrinking helped me make that one look bigger. You can do that with a stream. Maybe the stream does lead back to a pond, but try to narrow that pond, shrink one of those sizes, like here I am shrinking that vertical aspect of it, and I get that widening of it. And then as you put things around it, little trees and whatnot, that'll help it sit in place, and it'll help that perspective, and it'll give the idea that you have an immense object back there. Other things to add upon. You could have man-made waterways that extend back nice and neat. You could have a waterway that goes left to right. And then maybe you have the far tree line back here. And this is where you're going to introduce your artistic license in order to play around with these things. You can start adding grass to change that shape and make things interesting. Play around with the concept of this negative space right there and how it relates to the other object. Here, if we have a waterway going back, give yourself some rocks or dirt on the other side. Get something interesting taking place. Get a tree. Have a tree come over it. Have it cast a shadow on one side so you break up that perfect lines. So, anyway, in conclusion, play around with perspective. This is the bare bones of the perspective, and chances are the way you learned it in school, and you'll probably see it in books. Think to yourself, as things go back vertically, they shrink. As they come forward, they're going to get larger. Horizontal, as they go back, they're going to shrink in general. As they come forward, they're going to get larger, wider. See how the object sits in it. Allow yourself to play around with shapes and how they sit, and think about how they interact. Think about this space, the shapes that they create. This is just something that I came up with. Whether it made sense to you or not, I hope it might have maybe give you another way of thinking about things. But think about your field of vision. Think about angles and how they become narrower as they come from a further distance, and that's what's causing these objects to get smaller or appear smaller. And like I said, if you're into archery or hunting or anything like that, or just sporting clays or shooting, you'll kind of get the idea that's taking place there as well. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave comments down below. I'll get this one uploaded, and check out a whole bunch of links that I have. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.